Here we go. All right, so this workshop is to give everyone, all the participants, kind of a 101 level introduction to using drones in archaeology. It's going to be fairly technology heavy because I want to present to you the ideas behind using drones, the actual ways that you get to use drones, and of course, if you want to start using drones, the process by which you can start doing it legally and safely, which is the most important thing I think I should stress, and that is UAVs are, they go from the toy level all the way to wreaking mass destruction. So we're somewhere in the lower end of that scale. We are not military. We do have some large drones that we can use. They can get fairly expensive, but the impact of our technology should be fairly low to ourselves, to the environment. And that's one of the actual benefits of using drone technologies in general, is that we can, go to places that we normally couldn't go as humans, that we can do all kinds of interesting work with instruments that we couldn't do ourselves in the field. And then we can present all this stuff, and we can wrap all this stuff together in some really interesting and neat presentation packages. And I'm going to show you some examples of that today too. For those of you who don't know who I am, the people in SWCA, they've heard enough about probably my background and things in the past, but just a quick thumbnail. Have a PhD in archaeology from University of California, Berkeley. I studied quite a few things in my long tenure there as a lab rat and a field archaeologist. Spent about over more than a decade going to South America for extended periods of time doing field work. Back in the United States, studying paleoethnobotany, and also how nuclear science intersects with archaeology, isotopes, molecular biology, radiocarbon dating, all those, fancy pants things, because I was trying to basically extract as much information as I could out of botanical remains as possible. So that led me down some very advanced, very interesting fields. So with that, I became an adjunct and visiting professor at a few colleges and universities in Wisconsin. And after I would call it the devastation of the Wisconsin education system by certain administrations in the early 2000s, had to leave, and I started working for SWCA in 2013 actually. So that was so I've been with SWCA for a while, and part of our role at the company of SWCA was to always be looking for the next way to collect better data, use better technology, do things that advance not only the art but the science of our archaeology for our clients. And those clients range from individual cities to national, federal organizations. So let's move on to the objectives of what I wanted to present today. Well, we have our are some stated learning objectives and a ton of little minor things I can't get into. And I hope that you'll see that this is, in 3 hours, I'm going to do a massive amount of data dumping here. So for those of you who are really interested in it, I think actually reviewing portions of this presentation to remind yourself of certain things would actually be helpful. When I was a professor, I always recorded every single lecture I gave, and students found that actually quite helpful, so they could review what they'd heard. Oh, at the end of the class, I didn't hear what the assignment was. So they could just go back and, go back to the tail of the recording and say, oh yeah, right, that's what I was supposed to do. So don't feel shy. Actually, when we get these recordings, feel free to actually watch them and share them with other people later. So you can, I'm sure you're probably reading what I have up on the screen right now. We're going to run through all these things in 3 hours. Now, here's the best part. We will all get tired and probably go crazy if we had to sit here for 3 hours straight. So I'm going to do 45 minutes. So at 45, I'm going to stop and we're going to have a 15-minute break because I know everyone has an urgent email that just came in or a phone call they have to take or they have to get their water or some other kind of situation. So we will break, have a 15 minutes at at 45 and then come back and begin. That 15-minute break at the end might actually, I'll sit here and we can do Q&A at the end of that. And feel free, if you need to raise your hand and ask a question as we go through here. So first hour, second hour, third hour. Third hour will be application. Second hour, how you actually fly, programs, actually, equipment and then, how to use your equipment. And then of course, this first hour here, I want to run you through the steps and how to actually do this legally. There's a lot of folks, as a private citizen, you can fly on your own. You don't have to get a Part 107 certificate in most instances as a hobby flyer. But if you want to do any kind of research or using equipment that's owned by a company, you should get a Part 107 certificate. Now, I will say this, even if you're going to be a recreational flyer, you should still get a Part 107 certificate because that is still necessary to save yourself a lot of grief when it comes to, a time when you might have an accident, or if you were not aware of certain things like the rules of the air. Certain folks here who are listening, they actually have pilot's license. They know these things, so you can space out a little bit. But for a lot of folks, all of this air knowledge is actually an entire realm of unknown stuff. At the end of this, you can actually, if you're sitting in the airport and you're wondering why your flight isn't taking in and look and see what the NOTAMs are for the airport or the METAR data and say, oh, right, the FAA said we couldn't take off because of this, and you can actually get the real information. So there is actually useful stuff when we all start flying again. So let's go on to the first part here. So why use archaeology? Let's go back to the simple is always the best technique. I can collect all kinds of data on the ground. I can collect basically almost everything I need on the ground. But there are instances where you have questions, you have research goals, you have all kinds of things in archaeology that are ground-based or would be enhanced if you were 200 feet tall. So let's say, I'm a 200-foot tall archaeologist. I could see things that I couldn't see as a 6-foot tall archaeologist. So think of the drone as just another instrument that you're going to use to collect data, and collecting that data that are not typical in most archaeological projects. We can collect mapping data a lot faster. So if you're doing landscape mapping, the drone is probably the best way to go when you're going to do landscape mapping, because instead of collecting tens or hundreds of mapping points, you can get 10,000 millions of mapping points across your area. 3D reconstructions, all kinds of really neat, new methods and techniques open up when you get into using drones and the instruments that we can put onto those things. So archaeologists are always looking for the next big thing. They always love new techniques. They're, a lot of them are geeks and wonky. So drone work is now becoming quite common in archaeology. So it's important to learn about this process so you can understand it, and especially if someone wants to do work like this, you can help them along with their work. So drones in archaeology, they're here to stay. So, I don't think we're fighting it. It's just that sometimes, you want to understand, well, they want to do drones. Are they doing it just because it says drones, or there's actually a real science and a real data collecting, goal for this? And I hope I'll show you those, in the second and the third hour. So, all right. You want to get a Part 107 certificate, not only because the FAA behooves everyone who wants to fly not only for their own personal purposes, but for commercial and for research, it's required. So I do not believe that you need to purchase an online instruction course, but for a lot of folks, the need to actually have to sit down and take an instruction course is the only way that they're going to get the job done. For a lot of folks, just buying an instruction manual and studying on your own is going to be sufficient. But for those of you who want to actually take an online instruction course, there are hundreds of these things available with reputable schools. You can easily do it. It's all online now because we're not doing face-to-face work yet. But there's two main ways: do it on your own, get an instruction manual, or find an online instruction course. You have to study to consistently get over 70%. Then you have to schedule an exam. Then you take your test and pass. You get a temporary card from the FAA, and then they'll mail you your permanent card, and then you need to practice flying. So let's get to this part. So I'm not going to rep any particular online course, but I do in fact like this manual. It's the AOPA. It's a professional organization of pilots. They have a remote test prep book that you can buy on Amazon. It's like 20 bucks. But what I like about this one is that you get 5 online practice tests. So you can practice taking the test 5 times online, which will basically simulate what you experience when you get to a testing center. You can go it alone, or there's so many YouTube videos out there right now that you can view. So, you just type in Part 107 practice exams. You can get hundreds of videos, thousands of videos, hundreds of websites. A lot of folks, they're part of the share community. They love talking about it. They love doing instruction, just like I'm doing now. They're out there to help everyone. So study guides, FAA has a study guide. There's so many options to do this. So actually getting the knowledge to pass the exam is fairly trivial. And especially in areas where you feel like you might be lacking, proficiency, these YouTube videos really help. And I'll get to one of those portions here in a second. So YouTube, is fairly good. You can see all kinds of videos. You can do all kinds of background practice. Now, all test questions, right? They're supposed to be on a level of knowledge that would help you in making decisions in the field or when you're flying. They're multiple choice, and some of them are not that clear. So you do need to make sure that you are up to speed on every single one of the knowledge portions in the exam. You can actually go to the guidelines to see what type of the guidelines that they're using to build the test, so you can help game the test a little bit. But basically, just keep on practicing your practice test until you can get over 70%. You have 2 hours to complete the exam. Most testees take about an hour to do it, but sometimes you may have to sit there and really, just concentrate on the air maps. The air map questions are actually the worst. The hardest part are these air charts. They are a different kind of map because they're showing you the surface, they're showing you surface features, they're also showing you air and air features. So this is actually a 3D map showing you not only what you should see on the ground, like obstacles, towers. They show you electrical lines, airports. There's all this hidden detail and information that you want to know about because they'll ask you about it. So you can go into all kinds of detail in this, but just study these air charts. Study the air charts a lot, and make sure that you're getting this knowledge down pat, because there's typically about 5 to 10 questions just about air charts on that exam. It's very old school because right now, for us as drone pilots, we don't care about anything really above 400 feet. The FAA has set a ceiling for basically, standard drone operations at 0 to 400 feet above the ground. And if you're flying at 400 feet in an aircraft, you had better be landing or doing something, like crop dusting or doing something else that requires you to be lower than 400 feet, because 400 feet is actually pretty low to the ground in an aircraft. So if you're at that level, you need to be fairly careful. Now, a lot of helicopter pilots, I know that in Albuquerque, where I live here, helicopter pilots typically do fly in that airspace of 0 to 400 feet. And they use areas, they use the Rio Grande as basically a highway to go up and down, because there's nothing, there's nothing in there. It's a nice big open wide space, and it's basically an air highway. And our work sometimes takes us into that the Rio Grande Basin to do actual data collection. So you want to know what's going on with your airspace, and we'll show you some easy ways of knowing about your airspace here in a second. What's kind of interesting is the NOTAMs, and these are notices to pilots that come out constantly. All right, so here's something about questions. Yeah, these are NOTAMs. NOTAMs are little codes that the FAA puts out for pilots who will be operating between airports or within airspaces. Now, I searched here. I'll change the search here. So I'll go to Albuquerque. What are the NOTAMs for Albuquerque? Well, here's one right here. This. Well, what the heck does that mean? It's a set of condensed codes telling you something, and you need to be able to decipher these codes if you're a professional pilot, or if you're folks like us, we just want to know what it means. So what's a plain language decipher of this NOTAM? It says that these taxiways right here will be closed on these beginning and ending days. That's really important if you're a professional pilot. But for us, that really doesn't mean anything. The NOTAMs that we're really concerned about are when they shut down airspaces from the ground up because of dignitaries. I had a situation in Albuquerque where a president of the United States was visiting us. He was going to fly into Albuquerque and then go up to Santa Fe. So they closed down the entire central part of New Mexico to all air flight. And I hadn't checked my NOTAMs for the day. And I go out there and I realize that when I fired up my drone, it checked the NOTAMs for me. And it's like, you can't fly. Like, why can't I fly? Well, because you are shut down until the dignitary leaves the airspace and they turn the no-fly off. So it's really important that you know about this. Out west here, we have all kinds of NOTAMs that are associated with military operations. There's a lot of military space that you need to know about. And typically, when in doubt, just call the tower. I've called military towers. I've called civilian towers. I've called people just to say, hey, I want to do this operation here at this, at this ceiling, at this day and this time. And typically they just say, yeah, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Go ahead. And that's typically enough for you to feel sure that you're going to be okay for flying. There's a lot of areas out here in New Mexico that are military operation areas, and typically operations for civilian and for Air National Guard and where you bring people in and do basically flying around New Mexico airspace and military equipment. Those are kind of like 9 to 5 Monday through Friday gigs. So if you need to work in military operation areas that are not specifically off limits, like you're not going to be flying over, Area 51, in Nevada ever. But if, like you're out in the mountains just east of an Air Force base in White Sands, you'll basically be okay. But we have had military jets doing super fun things for them, I'm sure, at very low levels and scaring the crap out of us while we're in the field using our drones collecting data. So, sometimes, things happen that are not scheduled and you can't take that in consideration. So really, you just need to make sure that you're aware of your airspace. Let's see. Other things you need to know is your meteorological data. Flying is super dependent upon the weather. You shouldn't be flying in areas that have bad weather. So we'll get into that too. That'll be part of the safety of flying actual drones. So there's a lot of different options for taking your exam. Most large flight schools in the country offer this as a service. Tens of thousands of people are getting their Part 107 license every year, and that is just a nice constant stream of income for flight schools. And of course, these flight schools also offer you the classes to get your Part 107 too. So to actually get this Part 107, you actually have to become a known entity to the FAA, and you have to get an account, the ICRA account. So you go in, return to home page, and you set yourself up as a user. You then can log in. You have to accept the terms and conditions every time. And this is the way that all pilots track their certifications and they track their knowledge. There's lots of continuing education and classes you have to have as not only as a professional, but as a private citizen pilot. You have to keep renewing your license. You have to keep learning new things. So this is the system that the FAA has set up to help you through that process. And I'm going to say this, and I am not joking. The FAA is actually super cool. Everyone who seems to work for the FAA are cool. I've never had a bad experience with the FAA. I have called them. I have asked questions. I've been dumb. I've been smart. They are ready for you. They actually have a great customer service team. And if you really are just like out in the weeds, you have no idea what to do about a certain topic, just call them and they'll help you through it, because they literally, their job is to keep everyone in the air and everyone on the ground safe. So they, are there to help you, to keep you safe. They don't want any fatalities, no casualties, nothing. That is their job. And I've actually been quite impressed with their level of integration and contact with people. So do not be afraid of the FAA. Do not be afraid of them. They are there to help you. They are there to keep everyone safe. And, if you need help, they will not ignore you. And it's actually really been good. So I cannot say that enough. The FAA is there for you. And you can't, how many other agencies can you say I've never had a bad interaction with them? It's been pretty darn awesome. We just got a question by Denny Seymour. Do you have to renew the 107 license every year? And also important, you have to take the test each year. No, you are on a 24-month renewal cycle. So I was first issued my Part 107 certificate, as you can see, on March 8, 2018. I renewed last year. In 2020, I renewed and I took a renewal exam. That system is changing, so I'm not going to talk about it now. There's actually going to make it to where you don't actually have to go into a testing center and pay the same full freight. They're changing it now to, I believe, you can take an online exam. So I'm not going to talk about that. Things are still changing. But if you do get your Part 107 license, do expect that it's going to be every other year. Testing centers are open. This is Randy Alexander. Testing centers have been open and they are actually accepting people. Now, last year when we were kind of in full lockdown mode, they were only allowing one student in the building at a time, but they didn't have a real need. So, went in with full PPE, took the test, everything, wipey downs, everyone's all masked up, you're not, it was a fairly safe and good environment. So right now we can start doing this. In a lot of places, like Texas, go ahead, right? So you should be able to find that. In fact, the way that you do this is you schedule your test through the True Talent system. The FAA has subcontracted this. They were letting people just kind of do it willy-nilly before, and they decided that they were going to go through one vendor to do all of the scheduling for the exams. So you go in here, you can sign in. I have a, I can sign in here. So I agree with the, all right, let's go to me, sign in. Oh, shoot. Okay, this is, well, let's just say you go in here and you put in you put in your information, and it will give you the, it'll give you testing centers around a zip code or around a geographic location. It'll tell you who's open, and then you can schedule through them, and you'll get your, let's just go back. I know that, let's just go back to somebody else here. Let's go here. Let's just sign in as Pat real quick. Oh, he's expired too. I'm not going to change my password online here, but let's just say that you go in here, and then the question was, how much is the FAA Part 107 license? I believe we're paying about a couple $100 per license. Rates, depend, I think, on, they change a lot. So let's just look it up. Cost for FAA Part 107 test. Let's see, a lot of, yeah, here we go. So the flat rate is $160 paid to the testing center. Yeah, that's what you pay right there. So it's not that cheap, not that expensive. They want people to do it. But remember, when you get this Part 107 license, you are now joining the ranks of what we'll call, like basically, professional pilots. You're not flying planes, but you are flying, aerial vehicles. And, they want to make sure that this is a professional enterprise. Take your test and pass. Then after you pass your test, you go back into ICRA, and then you put in your information about your pass. The testing center will send that information to the FAA, and then you'll basically, the two ends will meet. You can download a temporary ID card saying that you are now a Part 107 pilot, and you can start flying. More importantly, what you can do is you can start getting onto insurance, and you can get yourself covered for flying, which is actually really important. Your permanent card shows up. It's a little, they give you a little plastic ID card that has your name, address, certain vital statistics. It does not have a photo, so you'll need a photo ID with your FAA card, and it will show what your current ratings are and certificates are on your card. So that's, yeah. Oh, oh, Jeffrey Pangburn just asked, do you have to carry insurance to fly a drone? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Depending on what you're doing and what you need to do, having insurance to fly commercially is imperative. And most of your clients will ask you about your level of coverage, and they will have a minimum requirement of coverage for you to actually fly, because you should be protecting your. You do not have insurance and something really bad happens, you will be held liable, your company will be held liable, and we don't want to even think about what lawyers could do to you, in case of an accident. So let's continue on. Now let's get into the good stuff here. That's, if you need help with getting your Part 107 license, there's plenty of help. You can even shoot me an email. I don't care. It's awesome. It's really easy. Call the FAA, do whatever, but the method and the mode is there for you to do this. So now, starting equipment. There's so many options now for drones that are available on the open market. And if you want a reliable, a fairly cheap, and a drone that you cannot use on federal projects, then you should go with DJI. I really like DJI. They have a lot of drones. They are the beast in the drone environment. They have all kinds of great drones. For us, for consumers, they sell Mavics, they sell Phantoms. Ooh, now you can get ground-based UAV, basically ground robots. You can get all kinds of fun, prosumer level things. You can get professional systems too. Now, the professional systems are, they're basically, I hate the Inspire 2 series, so I don't even look at this stuff. If we go to the enterprise system, these are what I typically that's what I'm using in my practice. I'm using Phantom for RTKs, which has a level 2. This here, the Phantom 4 RTK has a level 2 GPS. It integrates with a base station, so you can do differential GPS. You can do live correction if you have access to a correcting system. And of course, what's really good is it basically collects all your ephemeral data. It collects all the data around what the GPS heard when it snapped the photo. And it's collecting all that data, so then you can do post-processing correction, kinematic correction of your data after you get the correction file from, I believe NASA publishes that from the satellites. Because as we all know, that the GPS system, there's a small amount of uncertainty in any GPS system if you're working live. You can reduce that down to almost nothing if you have a correction center that's constantly sending out what the correction is in its local area. That's what a differential GPS, live differential correction, should do for you. So you set up a base station, you log into your correction system. It then says, okay, I know exactly where I'm at because I'm listening to the GPS satellites. I'm getting my correction from my correction server. Now I can send out a basically an instantaneous correction to my drone that's flying, so I can tell exactly where I'm at. And with that kind of system, you can be within 1 or 2 centimeters live. With the RTK, you can set up a base station, tell it to just kind of find itself in space. Then you collect the base station data, you collect your drone data, and you can correct it later, which is kind of neat. So this is for very, very high accuracy data. This is for folks who actually want to do survey grade work. Let's go back. There's the big boys, the Matrice Pro. This thing can hold very large instruments. We're typically not going to be doing this kind of work in archaeology. This is for, you're spent $200,000 on setting up this awesome special effects, car jumping over a train, landing onto a boat that then explodes, and you want this kind of drone to do that. 6 of these are in the air filming that special effect, that stunt, 6 ways from Sunday, because you don't want to spend another $250,000 setting it up again. So this is the kind of stuff that, they use in other industries. It has differential GPS signals. This is the kind of research drone. It has its own onboard computer system. You can load in your own programs to do lifetime analysis of the data you're getting, or just put on super expensive cameras and know that you're going to have, super accurate positioning and super accurate control of that drone. Also, there's all kinds of other payloads, very nice cameras. And for archaeology, I think the only other camera that we might be interested in would be infrared, and using infrared cameras to look at differential heating and cooling of the landscape to try and tease out features under the ground. Yeah, Jeff asked, the base station like professional landscaper used for plats. Yeah, I was talking about. Yeah, so you have a base station, they sell it, that integrates with the system, and your controller integrates those signals and sends out a correction. So when you're recording your photos, you're within a couple of centimeters. And what's more important, not the XY is all that important, but your Z, your elevation. If you can control your elevation within a few centimeters, your end product will be so much better. So for most of you, you're going to be in consumer level. The Phantom 4 Pro version 2 series has a really nice camera, 20 megapixel, has really good optics because they bought Hasselblad, the company, and they're using Hasselblad you know, basically camera mechanics. They have good CMOSs. They're really, you know, easy to fly. You know, they have a lot of, you know, a lot of great capabilities, and the market is kind of set up to fly Phantoms. Unfortunately, you know, they are the, you know, the big player in the world. So you will, you know, they can do this kind of stuff. They have their own flight systems, but for most of us, we're not going to be flying the way that, you know, most, you know, prosumers are flying. We're flying specifically on missions. So let's go back to the presentation. Another company I like, but has had a few problems, and that's Unique. They build a drone that is based around hex. They have 6 blades. They have good payloads, and you know, they're not DJI, so they're the next player. They're from Hong Kong. The company really will work with you if you need to. They also have differential GPS capabilities. The thing I like about these drones is that they're bigger bodies, and they can actually take constant wind pressures of over 16 to 20 miles per hour and really not be affected that much by it. We have a couple of these in our fleet to use if we know that we have to fly on a day that has high wind. That is the window, and we can take these out and get data as opposed to doing just our workhorse stuff. Let's go back to the presentation. Now, if you need to work on federal projects, if you need to work for the Department of Energy, or you need to work on projects that have government funding, and a lot of the other industries that you might be working for, their clients like oil and gas and electrical, you know, production and distribution, they're going to require that you have a drone that is not sending data back to servers in China. And there is a program for that called the Blue SUAS system, and they have produced a set of multiple companies, like 6 companies, have produced drones that actually, they're designed for basically folks who need to work within military/government environments. So this data, what I loved about this drone is I've got it right here. I've got my little USA, Anafi USA with me. When I turned it on, it said, "Would you like to register this drone?" And I said, "No." And it said, "Okay." And then when it said, "Would you like to join our program?" I said, "No." And it said, "Okay." And that means, and basically they are selling a drone that does not send any data back to anyone ever. Whereas with the DJI equipment, Unique, all these other manufacturers, you have to register with them. You can't fly your drone unless you get permission from them to fly it. And then when you log in to any network and your controller and your phone are connected to a network, it starts sending metadata from your flights back to servers, and it sniffs your data. This will never do it. The Blue SUAS system will never do that. It has encryption. It's really a sweet little, but the starting price for this guy is like $7,500, whereas the starting price for a DJI Phantom 4 Pro 2, I think street now is $2,000. Because not only do you have to buy the drone, but you have to buy all the other accessories to actually use the thing. Because you need lots of memory cards. Current practice for my pilots is every flight, when the drone comes back and you need to change the battery, you need to think about, is my memory card being full? So after every mission, you swap memory cards and you get a new memory card in there, and you back up the data you just made. It's imperative that you think about this. You might have, okay, so you have a 6-hour day of flying, and the first 5 hours are great. And then on the 6th hour, your drone fails and you lose it. It goes into the river or it gets stuck in a tree. You just lost 5 hours of data collection. Now, let's say each one of your missions was a half an hour mission and you swapped the card and you backed up your data, you will have only lost the last half hour of data in your drone. But for a lot of us, that price point of sending someone to the field and getting the data, that costs more than the actual drone itself. The data costs more than the equipment. So you got to think, am I doing this in a way that's going to, not only preserve my data, is it going to preserve my drone, and is it going to preserve my contract and my company? So I always bring backup drives and a laptop computer. I have typically all the batteries I need to fly my missions in the day. And if you need more battery time, a portable generator. I also bring out a radio frequency scanner. I bring out a wind gauge. I bring out a temperature scanner. Always have a full kit for putting out fires, because these high energy lithium ion batteries, in certain instances, when the case gets cracked and water gets into the battery, they kind of explode and have a very energetic fire response. So you need to be able to put out fires. So always have fire suppression equipment with you. Other safety equipment is, obviously your brain. You need to have your brain on. You need to have your brain working in a way that will hopefully fly safe. If you need to do bigger areas, you can buy fixed wing drones. There's a ton of these guys. SRP is one of the leaders in the market. They produce a VTOL fixed wing, so it flies like a helicopter on takeoff and landing, and it flies like a plane when you're collecting data. Super cool stuff. They've now got their own quadcopter. Worked with this company. They're very good. They will work with you as consumers, but these are very pricey drones. This is if you are going to be flying, square miles a day, as opposed to, 30, 40, 50, 60 acres a day. So let's see, let's keep going. Other instruments, thermal cameras. You can look up drone archaeology, thermal or infrared, and you'll start seeing people using thermal cameras to do archaeology by looking at the ground and seeing, like going early in the morning before the sun comes up and seeing what part of the landscape has retained heat more or less. People have done this in Italy, and they found all kinds of cool stuff, like roads and villas and, walls and all kinds of stuff. Near infrared is more for vegetation. Magnetometers are very specialized, and I haven't really got into that. But there are systems where you can fly magnetometers with drones and do large area magnetometer surveys with a drone. But that's a very specialized set of circumstances. And of course, we all want LiDAR, basically laser mapping. But on drones, it's still very expensive. And if you need LiDAR of large areas, typically subcontract that out, because unless you're going to do that as a business, I say don't do that, because we have other ways of getting really good mapping data outside of LiDAR. And then, of course, I'm 1 minute ahead. I swear we're going to get this break. That you need to register your drones. Every single drone that you have in your fleet needs to be registered. So you go on to FAA Drone Zone, you start a profile, you log in, and then you pay $5 per drone. And then every 3 years, if you're still using that drone, you need to re-register it. If you lose a drone, you lose a drone body. And DJI's maintenance system is, if there's a problem with the drone, they just send you a new body. You need to re-register that body, the serial number, because it's a new drone. So $5 per license, and then you should typically get some type of protection insurance for yourself. And the typical policies are like $1 million per incident. So if you fly commercially for research without the coverage, you will be held responsible. So that is super, super important. Cannot emphasize that enough. You need to be protected. Okay, good. So I'm going to, we're going to stop the recording. We're going to take a 15-minute break. I'm going to go refresh a beverage, and then I'll be back about 5 minutes before the top of the hour to answer any questions or clarify any things, and we'll move on to flying your drone. Okay, thanks.